Hello friends, welcome to another Microsoft Fabric video. In this video, we are going to explore an end-to-end solution using a data pipeline and Dataflow Gen2, basically the data factory solution. The solution is going to be in real time, we need a foreign exchange rate, like if you're working with multi-currency. So basically from a web, we're going to make a web call, get the daily currency exchange rate, and then update our table in data warehouse. Let me quickly walk through the different steps. I created a small PowerPoint presentation to show the logic, how the data will flow, and then we will create this end-to-end solution. Okay, so what we're going to have is, these are the steps. Again, we will talk about what we're going to do. The first step is, what we're going to do is, we will get the data from the web and we will store it in the staging table. So basically, every time we make a call, we need to first clear our staging table. We will see this in the action, why this is important. And the second step is, we are going to get the FX rate from our a REST API call we will get from the web. And then the next step is write data to the staging table. So we clear the staging table, we get the new data for the date, and then we write it in the staging table, or insert the record in the staging table in the warehouse. Again, the whole thing, all my Fabric videos are more focused towards if you are coming from a SQL background and working with the Power BI. So in this particular case, it's pretty much related to the data. So everything is related to the SQL, and we are working in the data warehouse. But this solution can be also extended to the lakehouse as well, if that is your choice where you want your data to be get stored. But in this, I'm purely talking about data warehouse. And the fourth step is, we're going to check in the staging table if the record exists in our final foreign exchange or multi-currency exchange rate table. If the data exists in the existing our final foreign exchange table, then we will update the record in that table. So basically, each date for each currency, we want only one single record. So if the record already exists, we will update the data. If the record does not exist, we will then insert a new row in our final destination table. And again, I created a small example how these steps is gonna work. So step one, we will use the data pipeline, and we will call an SQL script activity, which will help us to clear our staging table. Step two will be Dataflow Gen2, which will run, and it will get the data from the web and then insert the record in the staging table. And step three is again Dataflow Gen2, of course, in writing the record in our staging table. Step four is data warehouse. What is going to have is, we will have a store procedure which will make the decision whether a record exists or not. Again, this is a SQL statements and all that stuff. Basically, it's UPSERT. And step five is A and B. If it exists, then update. If it does not exist, then insert the record. So this is the whole end-to-end solution, getting foreign exchange rate and storing it in our final destination table on the daily basis. And the steps, what we're going to do is, first we're going to create the data flow, and then we will create a data pipeline to complete everything. Again, if you look, all these steps is going to be done in a data pipeline, which will bind everything together. Basically, script, data flow, and then the stored procedure, which we have in our data warehouse. So let's first create a data flow to do step basically second and third, and then we'll get into the data pipeline. Let's get to Power BI service. Before we get to Power BI service, I just want to make sure to show you guys the web call I'm making and the data I'm getting. So this is some website I'm using. It's called exchangeratesAPI.io. Again, you might have some different web hosting services or REST API you want to call. So this is what I see here is daily it gives me this JSON, and the base currency is euro, and then it has a date, and then it has the rates for the different currencies. I am only interested in Canadian dollar, Australian, and I don't know what PLN is, and then Mexican and the USD. So basically I'm getting daily data for these 4 or 5 different currencies by getting making this call every day from this website. So it's a free of cost right now. I think there are some premium features you can have, but I'm just, because for demo purpose, I'm using their basic feature, which is free of cost up to certain number of calls you make a month. I think that's what it is. So now let's get to Power BI service and create Dataflow Gen2 to finish step 2 and 3. If you've seen my previous Microsoft Fabric videos, I created a workspace which is called Fab Test, and in that I also created a lakehouse and the data warehouse. So in this particular case, we are only interested in Fab Test data warehouse. So I already have that in here. That's called Fab Test data warehouse. So that's what we're gonna use as to get our a staging table, and also as our final foreign exchange rate table, which will get updated on daily basis. What we're going to do is we can use get data from here and going to the warehouse, or we can also directly start a Dataflow Gen2 and give data warehouse as our SQL endpoint, our insert record. Do check out another video I did on this, how you can use Dataflow Gen2 to write the data to the data warehouse. Now I will post the link of that video in the description of this video. Do check that out. So what we're going to do is we're going to go get data, and we are going to go get data and create new Dataflow Gen2. I'm going to start with the blank query because I already copied the M script which I created previously, and I will walk through the steps. So it's pretty straightforward. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go get data, blank query, and paste my M script here. Next. So once this is done, we will see all the transformation steps. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, here it is, and let's call it get daily FX rate. Okay, so steps are pretty straightforward here. The source is again that URL what I showed you guys. That's pretty much what I'm calling web contents in JSON document, because we know that is returning a JSON. So that's what the first step is giving us, and then it's a record, and then we are converting it to table, and then once it is converted into table, we are expanding our rates column, because rate column contain the rate for the each currency. So we have a whatever X number of currencies. We have Canadian, Australian, PLN, Mexican, and USD. And then I'm unpivoting. So basically, as part of the best practices, we are bringing our date and currency, base currency, and the foreign currency into rows. So I have a timestamp, I have a base currency, I have a date, I have a currency. So that's euro is my base currency in this case, and this is my daily rate. And for 13th of, like when I'm making the recording of this video. And then change column type. Of course, that's important here, and that's the next step. And another one is added date and time. I just change the date and time. It gives us the Unix timestamp. I'm converting that into date and time, and then removing the columns what I don't need from the table, which is the timestamp column. So why I have a date and time, although we have it for each date, because it's not we're storing at the timestamp. The uniqueness is a date, base currency, and the currency. This is only I'm storing in my table to see when the last time that currency record, if it required, when the last time the currency the API was called to get the currency rate. So that's pretty much what I'm doing here. And now once we have this, let me actually, we can also rename, I'm not sure if we can rename our data flow here. Actually, we cannot. No. So this is Dataflow 10, keep in mind. So on the destination, what we're going to do here is, because the destination is already selected, the reason the destination is already selected because we came from the data warehouse and then we said get data. But if we have started the Dataflow Gen2 directly, we would have to select the data destination here. And let's we look into the data destination, because we have to tell all where the data we need to write the data. So it already have the connection because I did it previously. So it already have the connection. If I need to create a new one here and give the warehouse SQL endpoint here, do check out my another video how to do that. Once we have next, and now what I have is an option, new table and existing table. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call it a new table. I'm going to give it as I said, our first, second and third step is a staging table, insert the record in the staging table. So we call the API through the data flow, and then we are writing to the staging table. So staging, I'm going to call it FX rates, and where we want it to store. So fab test is because we have multiple warehouses, so I'm going to store into fab test DWH, and that's where again that's the one we are working on. So this is fab test DWH is the warehouse where I'm writing the table, and the table will be called staging FX rates. And then next, now the question is whether it's a replace or append. In this particular case, I can use any of these options. I can either use a replace or append depending what I want it to do. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the append here just for the demo purpose, and then we're going to save the settings. It automatically pick up the column names and all that stuff on the destination. We're going to keep it like as it is, and then save settings, and then we're going to publish it. Okay, so it's been published, and you know Dataflow Gen2, once it is published, it automatically go and refresh the data set, the data flow. So it's right now it is running, so we'll wait it to finish, and then I'm going to rename it to call something more user-friendly name. All right, it finished refreshing, but before we go forward, let's first rename this, and that is in the properties here. That's called data flow daily FX rate or FX rate. Okay, so now it is here at the bottom, sorry. And let's look at the refresh history here. Because it already executed when I published it, it automatically have the refresh get executed. So it already succeeded, as you can see. So what we expect to see here is, so get daily FX rate, so that succeeded, and then it has written the data to the table. So now what we will do is we will go to the warehouse and see if the table exists there, and how does that look like. Okay, so I have a data warehouse open in the second tab. So if we go, we see this staging FX rate table. I should have shown this did not exist previously, but anyhow. So what we have here is now we have a record in this particular table, and you can see the 4-5 rows. So this is working until this point. We have what we need, and now one thing is, if I execute to my data flow once again, and it will insert the record again. I said when we create the Dataflow Gen2, we said append, not replace, and I intentionally did that just to give you guys the demo about the data pipeline to creating a SQL statement to clear the table and all that fun stuff. So but otherwise, if I did the replace when I have the destination in Dataflow Gen2 to be replaced, then this would have been every time we execute a data flow, it will clear the table and then insert the record. So right now we have this. So now the next step for us is to create a pipeline to stitch everything together. And now the one thing is we need to have our final destination table as well. This is our staging table, This is not where we want to keep all the data. If we want it to be a final staging table as well. Now the question comes is why I want a final staging table, why I can't keep on appending the record in this particular table. The one reason is because this is kind of a control on the data to keep the data quality correct. We don't want there is a record for the same base currency and the date. There are multiple rows for that because we want is the one rate, one row for that particular combination. And if, for example, in this case, if we keep the append option open in Dataflow Gen2, and if same data flow run multiple times in a day for whatever reason, and then we will have the multiple rows for the base for the same date, and which we wanted to avoid. And if we say that Dataflow Gen2 to replace, then it will clear everything. So basically, to keep the data quality, our final destination table with the store procedure, we will make that control, like we want to update the record or we want to insert the record. I already created the store procedure, which I want to show you guys. Is pretty straightforward. Let me open that and show it to you guys. Prior to that, what we need to do is we need to create our final table as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take advantage of a SQL query here. So I'm going to keep the same structure of my final table as well, because it's going to be the same as the staging table. So what I can do is I can simply run in a query here, select star into whatever the final table name I want to give the name. Let's call it daily FX rate. So that's my final table, and from my staging FX rate table, we just want to copy the structure. I can manually have the script, or I can just take advantage of this to create that blank table. 1 is equal to 0 and just run it. So we will have a daily FX rate table with the same structure as the staging table. Staging FX rate. It's a rates. So my script has given the error, so we can look at the script here. So it is probably in script 9, the most recent one. No, okay, so 1. Okay, sorry, the table name is FX rates, so maybe I will change it to as the final destination also as FX rates. Okay, so it's executed. So now what we will have is a DBO daily FX rate. So if we refresh our schema here in the warehouse, we will see that table. I think we can have the refresh here, or it is automatically refreshing. Okay, it's automatically refreshed. So I think because we are working on Fabric is in preview and a lot of features are getting introduced. And last time when I checked, I have to click the refresh to get the new table, but now it automatically did that. So as you can see, there is already that table exists with the same structure as our staging. And if we run the query on this table, it does not have any record here because it's just a structure right now. And now what we're going to do is, so until this point of what we did is we created Dataflow Gen2, and we made the API call, have the destination to be our staging table, and then we created our a final table which probably will be used in our reporting models. And now the next steps is to make this UPSERT decision whether the record exists in the final table or not, update or insert. And also before we make the Dataflow Gen2, we will clear our staging table, so that Dataflow Gen2, every time when it calls, it only brings the new rows, doesn't have the old rows. So I already created the stored procedure. So the stored procedure is basically what it is doing is it is checking the daily FX rates, which we just create the table, and joining it with the staging FX rates. If the record matches on the date and the base currency and the target currency, then it update the FX rate and the date time, the stamp when we have the last API call made, and the type stamp came from that. If otherwise, it's basically what it's doing is if the record is not found, it is inserting the record in the table. This is what it's doing. Now, you might ask, why am you doing this update and insert? Why not I'm using the merge statement? And just to let you know, the SQL endpoint of Fabric Data Warehouse at this point of time does not support merge statement. Otherwise, I would have used that. And how you know which SQL statement or the which functionality of the SQL is available or not available, for me, the best method is to go to that a SQL statement on the Microsoft documents and then see what versions are supported. Let me show you guys where I see that. Here on the Microsoft doc, if you see the merge statement, it supports SQL Server, all these different, but it does not support Fabric SQL Server at this point of time. And if I show you guys another SQL statement, you will see like, for example, if we go to the if I show you guys the update statement, for example, and what you see here is it does says that this support warehouse in Microsoft Fabric, whereas in the merge it does not say that. For me, rather than looking around and why this is not working, my first thing is come to this documents here and see what that particular SQL statement support. And I thought the merge is supported, but at this point of time it is not. I'm pretty sure in the future it will support, and this was one of the way for me to find out whether the merge statement is supported or not. And that is the reason behind that I cannot use the merge statement. So I have these two separate target update and insert records. So basically that's what I'm doing here. Now this is all done at this point in time. So what we have is if we go back to our PowerPoint quickly, what we have is we have a get daily FX rate, write data in the staging table, and make the decision through the stored procedures. That's everything is done. So only what we need is we need to bind this whole thing together and just write this script. Before we make the step 2, we just need to clear our staging table. So let's create a pipeline and then bind this all together. To create a pipeline, so I'm going to new and then show all. And here under data factory, we will see that data pipeline. So I'm going to pick that. So our first step is to write a script to clear our staging table. So we will go under activities and then we're going to have a script here. Change the name of this, clear staging table. Let's call it FX staging table. In the settings, what we're going to do is, because it's not external, it's in this workspace itself, because our data warehouse is what we are changing. And then the option is data warehouse. We're going to pick our FabTest DWH. And it's a query or non-query. Again, this is a non-query because we are just deleting the table. We are not doing anything else. I can have the simple statement truncate my table. All right, it's succeeded, and let's check if that staging table has been cleared now. We don't have any record in our staging table at this point of time, so that's it means the pipeline which we created, the first step has worked. Now the second step is to call the data flow. So let's go to activities, and then we're gonna go data flow, and then let's call the, and in settings what we're going to do is we're going to pick the data flow. Okay, so we're going to select DFX rate. That's the data flow we created, and that's pretty much what we're going to do in this particular step. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, first run the script and then run the data flow. And now our next step is to call that stored procedure, which is to UPSERT. That's what it's going to do. and I'm going to have stored procedure here, call it SP UPSERT FX rate. Selected our data warehouse FabTest DWH, and then we have our SP UPSERT exchange rate. So that's what it is. So this is our final step. Perfect. So now our pipeline has been created. I'm gonna run this whole pipeline and look at the result. All right, so this is working perfectly fine. So you saw this succeeded, and then we can look to the view run history here, how long each job took, and I'm not going to go into these details. There's a lot of documentation around that. What we're going to do, you can actually in the real-time solution, which I will show you, I already did that. You will have the schedule where you will have when this pipeline should run. So it will run once in every day, but for whatever reason you end up running it twice a day, or you end up running the data flow independently, and but what will happen is your staging, this pipeline will first clear the staging table, and then data flow it will call and insert the record in there. So you will never get the duplicate records in our final exchange rate table. So going back to see the results, so if we go back to our warehouse here, and now if I go to my so here we have our data in our daily FX rates, and if we execute the data flow pipeline again, and if it's the same date, and it will not insert the new rows, it will update the existing rows with the new rates. So as you saw, putting this end-to-end solution in Microsoft Fabric using data flow and data pipeline was super easy. I actually found it very easy to use and work with, and we have a really good solution in place. Let me know what you guys think about this video. Do check out my Fabric playlist. I will share the link in the description of this video, and make sure to subscribe my channel and turn on the notification so that you get to know upcoming future videos on Power BI and Microsoft Fabric. Once again, thanks for watching, and do share your feedback and comments, and have a good day. Thank you very much. Bye for now. Thank you.